think it was Roosevelt. Roosevelt said it, right? Roosevelt said, I think it was him, said, all we have to fear is fear itself, right? So I want to talk to you today about fear. Listen, Mike, especially for you. That's fear. Make us not do many things. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said on the pasuk in Mishlei. What's Mishlei? Proverbs. Mishlei, Perek Chavchet, Yudaled. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'u shene'emar. What is it? It says, Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid umakshe libo yipol bara'ah. First of all, it doesn't really make sense. It says, lucky is the person who is always fearful. Makshe libo, and a person whose heart is hard, stubborn, or yipol bara'ah, is going to fall in bad terms. It seems like a recipe for failure, or permission here to be fearful and everything. Lucky you if you're afraid all the time. Now I want to bring to you something else also on something we're going to talk about today, is what is brought in Masechet Gitin, Daf Nun Hey. It says, Al Kamtza u'Bar Kamtza Charva Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim was destroyed over there because of two wonderful people, Kamtza and Bar Kamtza, without getting into the story now, very famous story. Al Tarnegol ve'Tarnegolet Charav Haramelech, on a rooster and a chicken, the mountain the mountain of the king, or the temple of the king, was destroyed. Al Yatet Shel Merkava Charava Bitar. So the story in which the Gemara brings on Sinat Chinam, on the self-hatred hatred of Kamtza and Bar Kamtza, which without a doubt is maybe the most, or one of the most, if not the most, common stories identified with the destruction of Bet HaMikdash, it seems that in very great counts became the main topic of Tisha B'Av, even though other things happen in Tisha B'Av. But that's the Sinat Chinam, and that's how we turn it around. So we talk about loving everybody and so on and so forth, and that hatred of a Jew to another Jew was really the core of the source of the catastrophe that happens, and in a way is the moral lesson that we should all learn from this destruction of the temple and the exile of the Jews as a result of that, and all the horrible things that happened to them. But if with all the production around that story, it would be quite surprising to really see it. If you simply read that story, there is a little bit of a drama that is happening here. Almost on an event on a non-event. Something that in a way we could have prevented, or something that happened that was really borderlining this whole thing, that kind of overwhelmed it. We see the story of a simple humanistic incident between two people. It really, if you look at it carefully, it really has nothing to do necessarily with the story itself, with time, or limited to that time only. So therefore we can learn from that for all throughout history and ourselves as well. And it's very, very interesting. That gap between the simple story that it says there, and the way it was widely accepted, that gap is something that we should really be wondering about, and it's quite astonishing to realize of that. But maybe the key to understand that really lays upon the way we edited the Gemara. When Rav Ashi and Rav Asi put this whole thing together, is on the way that the Gemara puts that, the story of Kamtza and Bar Kamtza, in connection to what's the story, what's the pasuk, what's the verse tells us in Mishlei, of on that. Amar Rav Yochanan, on the words of Rav Yochanan, Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid, al kamza u'bar kamza charva Yerushalayim. So maybe in the key to understand is why did the Gemara and how did the Gemara put that pasuk from Mishlei as a connection to the reason of the fight, and as a result of that, the destruction of Yerushalayim. You understand what I'm saying? So the pasuk that opens that discussion, the Gemara, is, as we said before, Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid. Lucky is the person who's always fearful. It sounds like a very loser mentality. Oh, he's always fearful. Oh, I'm afraid. It's like this nerd who's always afraid from the shadow of himself. However, if you just take back 1 second and separate that and start looking at things differently, you would see two different, what seems like at least two different mindsets in that. And one is represented by the words of Rav Yochanan, right? And one which is associated, not necessarily he particularly said that, but nevertheless associated with, right, with who? Rav Nachman from Breslev, even though you're Lubavitch, right? Not Lubavitch, ex-Lubavitch, right? Rav Nachman from Breslev, and what it says, שהאדם צריך לעבור על גשר צר מאוד מאוד, a person needs to walk on a very narrow path, והכלל והעיקר שלא יפחד כלל. And the reason, and the rule, and the essence of it is not to be afraid. So now, let me just explain to you, first of all, what it says. It means that kol ha'olam kulo al gesher, like you're walking on a path, on a narrow path, means that in a way everything is measured by a very narrow, deviation that you have. You can go straight. That's the bridge between this world and that world. But any deviation. But not to be afraid at all. So first of all, I want to clear this in terms of Rav Nachman. What people think. But when we say, the problem is when we say "Aikar lo lefachet klal," not to be afraid. So it seems like there is a machloket here. Here, Mishlei, as Rav Yochanan brought, it says, don't be afraid at all. Lucky is the person who is always afraid. Here you're telling me, don't be afraid at all. It seems like a contradiction. If you're telling me that the whole essence, that you should be afraid all the time, and you're lucky so, how can Rav Nachman comes and tell me, don't be afraid? If Yerushalayim was destroyed because we weren't fearful, so therefore, Chas v'Shalom, we can bring more destruction by acting like lunatics over there, not to be afraid at all. I'm not afraid. It's a disaster. It's like a person crossing the street, tell him, watch out, be careful, it's dangerous. Ani lo mefached. The truck's going there. Ani lo mefached. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So we need to really see exactly what it means. However, but if you really carefully look at it, you see that we're talking about two different fears here. Mike, don't let us keep you up. Don't think it's the same thing. Because if you look at the pachad, the fear that Rav Nachman talks about, and Rav Yochanan talks about, and Rav Nachman talks about, two different types of fear at all. When we talk about Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid, a person, lucky is the person who is fearful always, it is what we're talking about, the fear of yir'ah, awe. And this is a necessary fear. Ve'ayikar lo lefachet klal, and the main thing is not to be afraid of all, is the fear of doing things, of accomplishing things, an action. And there's just two different things. And we in our world today, Rabotai, reverse that completely. We don't have the fear of God, and we have anxiety of doing what we need to do. I need to go to learn Torah, I have a fear. I need to go to work, I have a fear. I need to get married, I have a fear. Okay, maybe that I understand, but you know what I'm saying. There's everything we do, we have a fear. We reverse the order of fears. We are afraid of the wrong things. And start to understand that. I'm afraid of failure. So what? You're afraid of failure, and you're not afraid of be late for davening or not daven at all? It's good to have fear, but you're taking your fear. I'm not saying you could eliminate fear. Everybody is fearful, unless you are an absolute lunatic who is not afraid of anything. So that's already a mental disorder here. But fear is there in you. Fine, take it and reverse it. Make the fear work for you. Don't let yourself work for your fear. Use the fear as something positive, not negative. So you should have Yirat Shamayim. You're going to make the case to me that you have Yirat Shamayim when I don't see you in shul davening? You're going to talk to me about Yirat Shamayim when you get up in the morning at 10 o'clock, strolling out of bed, having your coffee, having your cake, having your whatever it is, putting your tefillin on for 5 minutes and leaving? You call him that Yirat Shamayim? As Yirat Shamayim. You're not afraid of doing other things, but when I tell you, listen, do what you need to do. Oh, no, man, I'm too afraid to do that. I have anxiety. But how come you didn't have anxiety to get up on time or to stay in bed? For that, you didn't have anxiety? I'm afraid of flying. I have claustrophobia. But you didn't have claustrophobia being in yichud with a woman? You should have claustrophobic to be in a seclusion with a woman who is other than your wife. Then you should be fearful. And you know what? In today's day and age, should I say it? Today's day, right? In today's day and age, you should be very careful with that, because being in seclusion with a woman who other than your wife, you can open yourself to lawsuit. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the halakha. You should be fearful from the halakha of being in yichud. And for that, you make a teretz. Rabbi, I really need it for work. She shake my hand, I shake her leg. All the stories that you tell me. For parnasa. But not understanding who is really giving you the parnasa. So why aren't you afraid of what God told you? Why aren't you afraid of what Chachamim told you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Let me take this a little further. So that struggle that we have inside of us internally, and the balance between the two different types of fear, this is something that we all exist and fight and struggle through the whole entire day, if at all. Because when we go to the extreme, we see that the fear of what Rav Yochanan is talking about is not present at all. The other fear is there, and that's what Rav Nachman talks about. I think you need a battery, no? Do you want to switch a battery? The story that we have here deals with fear and fear that have a right to live and fears that don't have a right to live. But the pasuk in which we are talking, the beginning of the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, is really pasuk in Mishlei, right? So that's not the fear we're talking about. It says Asher Adam mefached tamid u'makshe libo, and this one has two fears. That pasuk has two parts. One deals with fear, and the other one deals with kashiyut alev, with hardening of your heart. Ashrei Adam mefached tamid. Lucky is the person who is always fearful. Ve'amakshe bera libo yipol. Amakshe libo bera yipol. A person who is not sensitive to that he's going to fall and going to stumble bera. He's going to fall into bad things. What does it mean? Let me talk about it like this. Let's say, for example, you have a 747. I don't know if you heard. There was almost, thank God, it was really mamash a nest. There was a major accident with airplanes in Air Canada in San Francisco. I mean, we could have like over 1,000 people dead, God forbid. Well, just because he missed, like, his name, Indiana Jones, his name, this guy, Harrison Ford, he missed the runway, was landing on a taxiing thing. There were 4 planes landing. So a pilot that has, let's say, a jumbo jet inside, I don't know, with 300 people, I don't know how many people going to this thing, his responsibility and the way he approaches that is not like a person who's riding a bike. Not a motorcycle, a bicycle. Because a person who flies a 747 takes upon himself a tremendous responsibility because he can cause an unbelievable, colossal damage to so many people, and the one who rides on a bicycle, much less. You could, but much less. That's why people who are rabbis and so on and so forth, they have an exposure to great people, need to be tremendously careful with their actions and the words, because the massacre, the damage that it can cause is horrendous. If you're on your own, you can, like the guy who, yesterday or whatever it is, committed suicide. He jumped on a volcano in what's the name, in Hawaii. Okay, I don't know, one person, but imagine creating an inferno because landing on the wrong runway. That's a tremendous damage. And so what Rabbi Yochanan is saying here, lucky is the person who is always fearful. Think very, very carefully. Think very, very carefully on the consequences that could arise, that could come out from your decision, this decision or another, that you're making along the line. Everything that you do in life, any decision that you make in life has a result to it, there's a cause and effect. So you need to think very careful, and that Chazal says, Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila. Think about the end before you're about to do the action. And we need to understand, because you are in a certain situation, and maybe in this case, you're going to make a decision over that decision, and there could be detrimental results to your actions. You need to be very careful, very, very careful. However, maybe what he's talking about here, he's also talking to another person that, for whatever reason, we always forget in the story of Kamsa and Barak Kamsa, is Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkolus. Is this particular rabbi, is a chacham, he was sitting in this meal, and he did not protest against the humiliation of and actually kicking Bar Kamsa out of the thing. You're the rabbi, you're the chacham, you should have done something. So this Rabbi Zechariah, not necessarily, if you think about it, acted upon Ashrei Adam Mefachet Tamid. Always be fearful. Now, maybe he didn't act appropriately from maybe, and I'm saying maybe, God forbid, I'm not trying to, but I'm just giving you an example for what we do. For some kind of a certain arrogance, which is the complete opposite of humbleness. And maybe at the end, when we understand that, we understand why Chazal call his action, or Chachamim call his action, anvanatut, super humbleness. Why? Because it might seem that it's not, what he was doing was not really anva. Who am I to act? Who am I to say? There's 2 rich people arguing. I'm just a chachamiko, I'm just a rabbi sitting here, and so on and so forth. He should have come up and said, "B'makom she'en ish hayeh ish." Like Pinchas. Pinchas was a humble guy. The story of Pinchas, we'll talk about it maybe Bezat Hashem on Thursday. The greatness of Pinchas, that he wasn't a person who had this teva in him to go and kill people. Out of charada, the word charedi. When we say, oh, charedim, in Israel, charedim. It's like come a dirty word, Haredi Jews. There's a fearful Jews. If you're really Chared Dvar Hashem, you're always fearful. That's what Rav Yochanan is talking about here. Get up and say, don't be afraid. Mata mefached. You got to say, hey, Rabbi, sit down. Say, okay, let me sit down. But let me tell you, what you're doing, God, is wrong. Be mechabed him, be this. maybe this Yerushalayim we would not have lost Yerushalayim, at least in the way we did. So even if you're thinking that you are nothing, there are certain things. Don't be afraid. Get up. Mefachet tamid. Sometimes in your actions that are you're going overboard, and sometimes by going underboard, that's exactly what's going to happen. You need to act according to the situation, not according to a predetermined program that you have in you. You have to adapt yourself to the situation. And having fear as well. But you have to know what you are afraid for. Are you afraid of yourself? Or are you afraid for Dvar Hashem? What's your reference point? If a person, Chas v'Shalom, goes to an inappropriate place, is he afraid that, and by the way, and that's what the Gemara tells us, what's the worse, a thief at night or a thief in the day? Who is worse? The one at night. Lama? Because he's only afraid from people who see him. He's not afraid of God. A person in the day is what?
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
לא אכפת לי, לא מאנשים ולא מאדם. So מה, you're afraid of people and you're not afraid of God? Look at what you're doing. So here, okay, you're afraid they're going to tell you to shut up, you're afraid you're going to be embarrassed, fine, I understand. But aren't you supposed to be afraid of Kvod Shamayim, Chas v'Shalom mitchalel? Because the tremendous Chilul Hashem, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, because we kept quiet. You can't be the silent majority who sits there and does absolutely nothing. You have to act upon what is wrong. Even if it has nothing to do with you in terms of your culture, as your religion or your race. If you see something wrong, say it. Don't be afraid. Well, you say, what do I care? Just let them break their head. Open up your mouth. Because ultimately it's not about you. And if you act like this, you're being so humble, you don't want to say anything, maybe you're not really humble. Maybe you're actually very arrogant in your humble. It's like a person says, I want to tell you a little bit. You go to somebody and say, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Sure, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a very humble guy. Yeah, you're humble, you're not humble. You're just anything else but humble. I'm a compassionate guy and I'm very humble. You're not. Okay? And so you can see there's a big difference between fear, yirah, eimah, that comes, all these things that we use in reference to Hashem as a result of our responsibility to our avodat Hashem and how we stand in front of Hashem in our world. So when I'm acting upon that or based on that, so I have yirat Hashem so I'm acting because of how am I standing in Hashem's world. I want to make sure I'm doing the right job as a derivative of our job in this world, right? I need to make sure that I have the proper responsibility to execute my job that I'm here in the best possible way, and that's a fear that we are talking about. To the fear in which we are talking about of a debilitating fear of chosar asiyah, of lack of doing. And I'm sitting down at home, I'm so overwhelmed by my fear, so I'm going to cover myself in a blanket, and hopefully that this nightmare is going to go away, and I wake up and it's all good by itself. And it's not going to be good by itself. Oh, don't worry, things are going to be better. I'm just going to sleep it over. It's not going to be better. You need to identify the core of your problem, and you need to act upon it. Otherwise, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. It doesn't go by itself. Now, I'm going to tell you even further. I tell this, especially you, to all your liberal friends in school. That's the difference between capitalism and socialism or communism and so on and so forth. Socialism, communism is really based on a goodwill and of equality and so on and so forth. And capitalism is based on jealousy and the love for the dinero, for the good old dollar, right? Ta'avat betza. Communism socialism, something very nice and very pleasant, right? Look, for example, Sweden. Oh, you're coming from Sudan? Go ahead, come on. You're coming from... Bechavot, come on. By the way, did you notice that most of the refugees that escape from these places, I don't know if you noticed that, most of them are men, young men. In ratio to men to women or children, the numbers are astonishing, but that nobody will tell you that. But look what happened in Sweden. All of a sudden, Sweden is collapsing. But that's not what I'm really talking about. But everybody saw, and everybody sees what happens when you're trying to base economy on socialism or communism. You saw what happens. It doesn't work. It collapses. It brings corruption. It brings abuse. It brings depression. It brings alcoholism, whatever you want. Women trafficking. For that, we don't care. We don't care when women are being used as commodities, as prostitutes, when we do human trafficking. Why do you think they do that? Because people make money. There's starvation. Women need to sell themselves. Why in certain countries there's such high level of human trafficking and prostitution, where in other countries they don't have? I'm not talking about kidnapping. Because you give them a way to live. So, but for that for human trafficking and prostitution, we don't make such a big deal. Why? Because it serves our darkest places. That we don't care. It's all a pretend game we give. Our society is rotten. But surprisingly enough, only this piggish capitalism, only that, the dirty capitalism, which is so-called driven by bad urges, money, and so on and so forth, brings for prosperity in society, and much greater prosperity than socialism and capitalism. And I don't care how much you're going to argue and scream and disagree, but that's a fact. In the same way, a religion who is going to be based only on positive feelings like love, all you need is love, right? And dope and some other things, right? Any kind of a religion is only based on that might completely dissolve quickly. And only a religion who is based on awe, fear, I'm not saying afraid in terms of respect of that. Only a religion like that can maintain itself and to flourish for thousands of years. And again, we don't need to substitute fear. We need to know how to balance it with feelings of joy, with positiveness, with pleasant feelings, with a sense of purpose. You need to balance it. You make your fear work for you. You channel your fear because you can't get rid of it. So you channel your fear from a fear of action to the fear of God. You're actually concerned that causes you to do things. And because you're able to do things, you're able to accomplish. And when you accomplish, you have meaning. And when you have meaning, you become a better person. If you do so, fear is not going to choke you. You're going to eliminate what is so-called anxiety. As we say, v'ten uvchen, and so, ten pachdecha Hashem Elokeinu al kol ma'asecha ve'imatcha al kol ma shebarata. Give your fear, your awe. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu took the mountain and put it on top of Am Yisrael. You're getting the Torah, you're not getting the Torah here. Okay, we get it. Because if it's not, imagine Kadosh Baruch Hu says, hey, guys, hello guys, yoo-hoo, guys, Am Yisrael. So, yeah. So I have a Torah here for you. Okay, let us finish the joint first, and then we're going to have some munchies. I don't know, we'll talk about it. Come here, compadre, compadre Cheech. I have a smoke here. Sounds like Cheech and Chong in California, It doesn't work. The whole flower, hippies, everybody, I'm a hippie. You're not a hippie, you're a moron. You're not a hippie. Look what happened to them. They're the biggest corrupt people out there. Including some ex-presidents that were hippies and playing saxophone. And look what happened to them. End up smoking cigars instead of, you know what I'm saying, right? All corrupt. The fear is there. V'ten pachdecha, put your fear, Hashem, in order for the world to function. You should have God in your life, so that will make you do things in a responsible manner. Ve'ematcha al kol ma shebarata, and your awe on everything you created in order for it to function appropriately. That's how you deal with fear, Rabotai. And that's how you could explain Rav Nachman verses, or what is a tribute to him, or the words of Rav Yochanan based on Mishlei. Rabotai, it's not a matter of not being afraid, is how to be afraid. Have a great day. And a fearful one.